Now to Gaza, where negotiations over a plan to end the war are scheduled to start in Qatar on Thursday. The region's on edge as Israel waits for retaliation from Iran after the killing of Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. Negotiators want to use a plan put together by the Biden administration at the end of May and endorsed by the UN Security Council. This plan calls for a 6-week ceasefire in Gaza. Hamas would release its remaining Israeli hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. Israel would allow unlimited aid deliveries and its forces would withdraw from the territory. But Hamas says it is losing faith in the US as a mediator and will not attend the talks. The top official in Qatar for the Palestinian militant group whose October 7 terror attacks sparked the war said Hamas would still hear from negotiators.
We expect to be told by the mediators that Israel has accepted what is being offered, and any meeting should be based on talking about implementation mechanisms and setting deadlines rather than negotiating something new. Otherwise, Hamas finds no reason to participate.
Mohammed had left his family to pick up the birth certificates of his newborn twins. Now he's in a morgue where his children's bodies lie alongside his wife's, wrapped in plastic bags. Killed in an Israeli bombardment in central Gaza. The twins were just 4 days old.
I was away to get the birth certificates for the babies. My wife gave birth the day before yesterday. I didn't even have time to celebrate them. She gave birth by cesarean section, and she was still tired and couldn't walk.
Reem Abu Haya is only 3 months old. Her face covered in cuts and bruises. She's the only one of her family to survive an Israeli strike that hit her home on Monday.
The baby was breastfed by her mother. We've been trying to feed her formula since this morning, but she won't accept it because she's used to her mother's milk.
After 10 months of war in Gaza, the Strip's Hamas-run health authority says almost 40,000 Palestinians have been killed, leaving many grieving families and many children without their parents. Israel says its military tries to avoid harming civilians and blames their deaths on Hamas that operates in dense residential areas.
They can't beat us on the battlefield, but they think that they can beat us in PR terms. It is Hamas that is responsible for any civilian casualties in Gaza. They're not that upset that there are civilian casualties. They wish there were 10 times more because it's a key part of their strategy.
And as Israel increases the pressure on Hamas and its leadership in its response to the October 7th terror attacks, more Gazans are likely to pay a heavy price. Many here will be watching and hoping that ceasefire talks slated for this week are not abandoned, and that some kind of deal can be reached to offer them some respite in this relentless war.
Israeli peace activist and author Gershon Baskin negotiated with Hamas on the release of Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit back in 2011. Welcome back to DW, Gershon. We've been here many times before. Is there any reason to think a breakthrough might happen this time?
The only reason to think that a breakthrough might happen is the joint letter that was issued by the 3 mediators, President Biden, President Assisi from Egypt, and the Amir from Qatar, Stethani. They seem more determined. They made what can be read as an ultimatum, and they said that they would put bridging proposals on the table. In more than 10 months of war, we haven't yet seen the mediators play such a proactive role. The Israeli response is that the heads of the negotiating team are going to Doha. That's the head of the Mossad, the head of the Shin Bet, the Israeli Internal Security, and the representative of the Israeli army. And they spent most of the day today with Prime Minister Netanyahu going over their instructions, perhaps their limitations. Hamas is not attending because Hamas and Israel don't sit together, but the Hamas leadership is in Doha and they are communicating regularly with the Hamas leadership in Gaza, and the Qatari and Egyptian mediators coordinate and speak to the Hamas leadership. So this is an important negotiation, and we'll see how forceful the mediators will be. They all have carrots and sticks that they can bring to the table. And from what we hear from them, they are saying it's time for this war to end and it's time to bring the Israeli hostages home.
All right, so just to be clear, this is the fact that the Hamas team are not at the negotiations. That's usual because they won't be in the same room, but they are taking part.
They have never been together with the Israelis in the same room. The talks are probably happening in Doha because the Hamas exiled leadership is in Doha, and it's easy for the Qataris to communicate with them. They communicate with them on a regular basis, as do the Egyptians. So even tactically, if Hamas said, we're not participating in this round of negotiations, they are. They cannot not be participating because the Qataris and the Egyptians will deliver to them whatever comes out of the room when they're sitting with the Israelis.
So as the world holds its breath, waiting for Iran to retaliate against Israel for the killing of Ismail Haniyeh, Iranian officials have said that Iran will attack Israel directly if Thursday's talks in Qatar don't reach an agreement. What do you make of that threat?
Well, first of all, there's an additional incentive right now on the table to reach an agreement. If Iran is sincere about what they said, that if there is a ceasefire agreement reached, then they will not attack Israel. That attack has the possibility of spilling over into a wider regional war. We don't know what the attack would be, what would be hit, and how many casualties there would be. But if it would be significant and severe, catastrophic from an Israeli point of view, there would be an Israeli response to it. We have American and British warships surrounding this region in the Mediterranean, in the Red Sea, in the Persian Arab Gulf, ready to take action if Israel is attacked. We really don't want this to spill over into a much wider conflict, and therefore it's really important that these talks in Doha lead to a ceasefire. There are some inaccuracies about the way that it was presented at the beginning of the show, but it doesn't really matter because I think that the mediators will put a new proposal on the table, which should talk about a 4 to 6 week period that would end the war, bring an Israeli withdrawal, and returning the 115 Israeli hostages, those who are alive and those who are not alive.
Good talking to you. Thank you for talking us through that so clearly. Israeli peace activist and author Gershon Baskin.
Thank you.